The wildest thing that's happened to me was I was working in the first office that I helped open for my father-in-law, and him and my now wife, they took a trip for a month to Malaysia and they were gone, and I was just the only person. And customer walks in, this office, we had a nice bathroom, right? And in the actual office, it was a small office, but we had our own private bathroom. It was great. Customer, would always, every single time, no issue. But of course, when he's gone, this customer decides to use the restroom. They're in there for a while, like like a very awkward long time. And you're just like, okay, you're sitting there, they come out, you don't think anything of it, right? They leave, they do, pay their bill, they leave. Like, okay, cool. And then I have to go to the bathroom. I don't know if you've seen the movie Dumber and Dumber or like whatever.
Yes.
Like,
Dumb and Dumber?
one, right? Like, yeah. Well, the second one where, he has the Hershey chocolate in his back pocket, melts, he wipes it everywhere. It looks like there's crap everywhere. Right? Well, that's what I walked into. I walk into there and it's on the wall. It's on the floor somehow. It's not around the sink though. I mean, so I'm not quite sure on that one, but yeah, that was an awesome thing. Also, we clean our own bathrooms, and I was the only employee, and they were gone. So yeah, that was a sobering experience. Never worked by myself again, and we had to have a talk actually with that customer and said no more. We wouldn't allow them to. So that's the wildest thing that's happened to me out of my 12, 13 years with Allstate now. So my name is Seth Smith, Seth Smith Agency here out of Fort Wayne, Indiana, and I'm an insurance dude.
Insurance dudes are on a mission to escape being handcuffed by our agencies.
How? By uncovering the secrets to creating a predictable, consistent, and profitable agency sales machine.
I am Craig Pretzinger.
I am Jason Feldman.
We are agents.
We are insurance dudes.
Boom! That is an amazing story. I love that we were talking prior to this and you're like, well, let me think of a story.
That's really crappy.
Or you had that one, you're like, I don't know if I want to say that one. Yeah, that's probably what it was.
That's the one. That's a good one.
Yeah.
It was a crappy story.
Yeah, very, very bad. It was a
very crappy. Yeah.
I don't understand like how you miss. Like it's a pretty simple setup, right? Like the whole toilet thing.
Yeah.
Like it's pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, and my thing is though, like that besides the point, there was no mess around the sink. That's my most concerning part, right? Like,
right.
I mean, that happened, and then they came right out, right?
Oh,
so I'm like,
did he give you a big hug after he came out?
Oh no.
Did he shake anybody's hand?
Huh? No.
Oh, good.
Nope. I didn't hear the sink, so I was like, yeah, I'm not. This is not happening. No, like I usually do, but no, not this time.
Wow.
So this is gonna make you feel better. Is I work as a busser at a bar. It was a big bar in Fullerton owned by the guys from Lit. So it was all like rock and roll paraphernalia. They'd get extremely busy. So one night on like a Friday night, it got crazy busy. The next thing you know, they're like, there's some lady in the photo booth that like won't come out and like, well, all this stuff. I'm like, what's going on in there? And to make a long story short, we could kind of see the legs and like the underwear dropped and there's poop everywhere. And all of a sudden she ran out and ran down the street. I'm like, what just happened? Like what? Like, and I'm a little hazy on, I think I got brought into this like the very last second. So I don't know exactly what.
We've all been there. I mean, I don't know about you guys. I mean, we've all been there. Right?
Yeah.
In a photo booth, you got to go when you got to go.
100%. And so and I know that our bathrooms had a line. So like she just couldn't make it. So then we opened the curtains. On the curtains, there's poop. There's poop everywhere, smeared all over the top, the bottom, everywhere. And it was like, well, you're the new guy. And so I had an entire crowd, like a Saturday, hundreds of people watching me clean every inch of the photo booth. So that was like right when I started, and like everybody was like, dude, I got mad after you. I wouldn't do that. Like, so
like you just knew at that point it could never get worse, right? Like, yeah. I mean, like the job could not get worse at that point. So you stick it out, it's just upward there.
Right.
Was this before or after kids?
Oh, before.
Oh yeah. So you were not prepared for anything like that. Like after kids, you're kind of desensitized to some of that.
Well, that's just a Friday night. Like that's a normal day.
That's what it is every day at your house.
I have two boys.
Yeah.
Boys and wiping themselves, issues.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh,
I wonder if there's anybody still listening.
I know. Okay, so let's dive in. Seth, so you've been a part of a family that it sounds like have worked for captives. Tell us the whole story. Let's get into that.
Yeah. I mean, kind of funny story, but I mean, it's also kind of how I started dating my wife too. So it led me to my wife, got to give them respect for that, right? But I was working at Staples. I was the tech nerd, whatever you want to call it, fixing computers. I sold my now father-in-law his computers, office chairs, desks, like everything
Oh,
for
wow.
his office. And he just said he liked my personality and just how I was selling everything on, upgrading him on everything. So he was like, hey, I need a salesperson. I'm starting a brand new agency. And, there wasn't one in that town at the time, and it was in a rural area. So I said it was going to be a good opportunity, and I'm making next to nothing anyways at Staples. So I was like, why not? Didn't hire me because then his daughter wanted to date me. And so he didn't want that kind of like awkwardness, but he decided to anyway. So we helped open that office, and then we got it over to, we were one of the top agencies at that time in the state, in Indiana. Just wrote a bunch. We grew it in like 3 or 4 years to 1.2, 3 years. And then essentially offered him to open another one up in Fort Wayne. So we were like, okay, go ahead and do it. And so we opened this one here and as well. Then we sold off the other one. Having 2 locations was a little bit of a stretch for us. I mean, they were about an hour apart each way. And so it was better. The agent who took over has been doing an amazing job with it. He worked for us at the time, and it just turned out to be an awesome situation. And then we opened this one scratch, and I think about 9 years later, he ended up selling it to me, and I took over. I haven't always been, I worked for him, and then, you always see that there's greener on the other side, right? Like if you always want to try new things, I was 21, 22 when I first started. So I tried all these other jobs. So yeah, we just essentially decided to, I tried all kinds of different things, selling in-store, 100% commissions, all that stuff. I even tried opening my own broker office as well, and it just didn't work out. So, but essentially when he was ready to, we had this game plan for me to take over, and then all of a sudden he was like, by the way, I'm going to go ahead and do this. And yeah, so
when did that happen?
So early 2021, we were planning on like a 3-year plan. So, in 3 years, I was going to take over. And then a new comp structure, came out, and it just like all these things started rolling. And he's like, you know what? I'm at that age, not ready to do it. So he's like, I'm not wanting to do this. I'm not wanting to go through change. So I was like, all right, more than happy to take over. I'll just somehow make this all happen in 6 months, and we'll go from there.
Super cool. That is awesome. There's not many agents that start working from an LSP standpoint, right? And I think that's so cool to have that experience before, because something about, being in the trenches and then being at the helm and being able to empathize with what everybody's going through, right?
Yeah.
Super cool. So how have things changed since you started? So what was your approach to sales with the first couple agencies? And then now what is your approach? And how's that changed?
We've always been about new biz, right? Obviously everyone wants new business. You always want to try to write as much as possible. The only thing is it was at a point easier to keep customers, and it was more cost effective at the time to keep customers. So when we first opened the first one into the second one, it just made more sense to focus on retaining, still writing new business, but try to retain as much as possible. And something that I've had to shift from, especially taking over last year, we want to retain as much as possible, but there's a lot of things outside of our control right now. The only thing that I do have control over is how much I spend on marketing, bringing new customers in, and doing our best, with the sales staff training and getting the new business, because that's where the obvious focus is now, is get as much as possible, as fast as possible right now too. So that's where I've had to really kind of shift my mental, is like, yes, I want to retain as many customers as possible. I still want to go above and beyond for my customers, but at the end of the day, people are leaving for $1, $5, a month, and your service isn't worth as much as what it used to be. Loyalty, we can do everything we can to show why we're different, and we know why we're different. But at the end of the day, especially right now in this, where we're at as an, economy and everything, it's all about the saving the penny, right? So that's what we have to focus on, is just bringing in the business.
Yeah, it's been my experience that value proposition that makes us more valuable than the everybody else, right? Because we're already perceived as a commodity. So in this situation, you have these people that are willing to bounce for a nickel or penny or whatever, right? Creating that value is so important, but not just after acquiring them, but the whole journey, right? So if they come in as a lead, obviously meeting them where they are with that lead to give them the fast, quick, easy, all that stuff. But then in that conversation, transforming it so that it becomes something of more value, right? We have to differentiate ourselves. Oh, yeah. What kind of things do you do up front? Do that.
One is definitely is building the report, right? More that we treat every call as transactional. That's how the customer will see us. And then also when it comes to renewals, it's transactional, right? There's no report, there's no substance. Without that substance, there is no differentiation between progress or, any of those 1-800 teams, or even brokers and stuff like that. There's just no difference between us and them. So we got to show them why we're different. And that's one thing we do, is we spend time on the phone. I don't care, it's an extra 15, 20 minutes. That's what's going to set us apart. Finding out out about them. And then also during that time while you're finding out about them, just getting information like, like about their family. That way, leads to referrals, and also just letting them know like the agent value. So that's one thing that we definitely do here is just stress on, like, if they call my office, I might not be available 24/7, but if they need something, they know I will call. They can talk to their agent. They can. So that's something like that. Even my salespeople that, go is like, hey, you're going to see his name on there, but if you need something, he's there and he'll call, he'll talk. And I don't know, I feel like that's what separated us, and just being genuine and front with the customer. Even if they leave, I mean, we're still leaving on a good note. And I'd say at least 95% of the people that leave me tell me they don't want to leave. They said, I wish I could stay with you. I wish, but the difference between what's out of my control and what the other companies are offering, it's just out of our control. And this, like I said, in this time, it just, every penny counts.
Yeah, I remember in one of our weekly calls that we do with our members is that in those that instead of fighting to keep them, like, our natural gut reaction is to fight. We got to save it. We got to save it. Got to save it. We're going to make an effort to save it. But instead of, I guess, for lack of a better term, like poisoning the well by being a little too clingy, right? Nobody wants somebody that's clingy and, please don't go, right? We're not going to beg for it. But at that point, and this is what came out of this discussion and why it sticks out, is they said, look, I totally get it. You got half off. They're losing money to acquire you in this instance, and that's okay. You're going to save $500. That's great. So this is what we're going to do. I'll circle back at 6 months. I'm going to put it on my calendar. I'll call you myself, or Larry will call you, and then we'll get you requoted. And likely they're going to be going up so that they can actually be profitable, and we'll probably have either a sweetheart rate or we'll be able to be right in the wheelhouse. Because at the end of the day, our costs are pretty similar. And you get that, right, Mr. Blah, blah, blah. And then they're going to say yes, and there you go. Now you've pre-framed it, right?
Always getting the permission for win-backs is one of the key things when they leave. We get the permission right then on the phones, and that way we do have, no matter what, the ability to call them back. And we never hear, like, maybe one out of the blue will be like, no, I don't want you to call me back.
Right.
Okay, that's your prerogative. But 90% of the time, or 95%, it's going to be, yeah, please call me back. I have no problem with it, and they would love to come back. So
this is the instance of asking for permission is a good thing, whereas normally we just ask for forgiveness, right?
Yeah, exactly.
At least with our wives.
Describe your team and their roles.
So we're including me, a 3-person office here. I have one person who is just 100% dedicated sales. They don't do customer service. They don't do any of the follow-up stuff like that. I have an office manager who will do that, the notes of cancellations, all that stuff. And then we'll kind of split the reviews. And I still sell because that's honestly one of my favorite things to do. I've always been with my father-in-law, but I've just always been the sales manager, salesperson, and that's one of my favorite things to do. So I don't want to, just because I'm the agent, to lose out. So, and that's one of my favorite things to do. So that's essentially what we do. Is I kind of tend to do every of the areas, but I do have a dedicated salesperson because I feel like right now that's one of the most important thing is not having them split, is just at least having that one person or multiple people if you can do it, and just have them 100% dedicated to sales so that they're not getting burnt out with those, customer service calls or issues. And, I'm used to dealing with them. Salespeople that's not their forte, right?
Love that. It's a different breed, right? Like a salesperson is a different breed than a service person.
You don't put a baseball pitcher as the kicker for the football team. That'd be crazy, but that's what we try to do.
Yeah. So true. Yeah, it's crazy. It's funny too. You take somebody that's on service and you tell them to sell, and they clamp up. Like it's like, like it makes them feel horrible, right? It makes them just hate their job. And then with the salesperson, it's the same thing. Like they love to hunt. They love to go out there. They're not afraid of rejection, but they're usually not as detail oriented, not as like follow up oriented. Like they just love to talk to people and not as organized, right? Yeah. So it's like you try to throw a salesperson into a service and salesperson, it's wacky,
Yeah. And that's something I've had to teach myself, is to become all the roles, right? Because I was a salesperson, and that's exactly, I love to hunt, love to challenge, taking notes, doing all the, the follow-ups, getting the paperwork, like we didn't have that kind of organization when I was in the sales position. So it did burn me out when I had to take in all the customer service calls and then still sell.
Yeah.
That's tough.
It didn't work.
It's like having to change how you think too, right? It's different ways of thinking.
How do you juggle wearing all those hats?
Sometimes I feel like I don't. I don't know. It's just one of the things, like I don't have a choice. This is, to me, it's my, family's livelihood. and I've got to make it happen. I've got to make sure that I have everything in place that I need to, compliance wise, to help protect us, and just the things in place that helps makes us successful as for sales, but then also compliant when something does come up, like with claims and whatnot. So it's just something that when you're in that position, you're either going to adapt or fall apart. And to me, I don't have the choice of the second part, like this, we're a single family income, like it's from me. So I got to make it happen. It's kind of how I have to.
Yeah. I think the pressure is so good in creating energy and movement, right? Like you can't sit idle because if things fall apart, it's all on you, and then it's not good, right? So we got to make sure that you provide and you get it done. The other, I think, important part that this probably will resonate, like your message will resonate with a lot of people, because I think there's a lot of agents that are at this stage of their agency. I think is important also to acknowledge that it probably it's not sustainable to be the jack of many trades forever. Right? Like, but knowing, okay, this is I'm going to do this for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, whatever it is. And then I'm going to pull myself back. I'm going to have somebody that replaces me that oversees this stuff. Then I can focus on higher level acting. And knowing that is an important thing. I think young in my career, I didn't have an understanding of that. It sort of felt like, and feel back to feelings, right? Like what you feel is what you perceive to be true. And so it felt like there was no light at the end of the tunnel for a very long time. So anybody that's in this spot where you're doing this is normal, right? It's normal for it to be insanity right now. Right. At the front end, but you push through this, and hopefully there is, somebody at home and a family that depends on you, because I think that really fuels it. But to push through this part, knowing that there is a plan here, or you should have a plan, get to where then you can scale.
Exactly. And that's essentially like, I'll be honest, I was cocky going into this at the beginning of last year. Not gonna lie, I was like, you know what? I did everything, before. I can just do it myself. I'll be able to handle all of it. We'll still grow. But then as the year kept going, I was like, I'm gonna lose my mind. So I was like, it's gonna be one of these days. It's gonna be it. Gone. So I was like, you know what? Did I have exactly the funds to bring on a salesperson? I didn't at the moment. I have a loan for the office. I have all these other bills, and then I have to increase marketing. And it's like, but at the end of the day, I had to look at it as like, can I sustain, say, for the next 6 months, paying this person, training them, and then putting something in place to where in 6 months, we'll start seeing the returns, right? Like we'll start seeing, like usually I say 2 to 3 months, you're eating it, right? You're just going to have to eat it. You're training, you're making them learn, you're helping them learn, you're going to make bad decisions along the way and good decisions, right? So you just have to eat those first 2 months, but it's one of the best things that I did, because they're helping, bring in majority of the sales, and I can just supplement with some of the others for right now. And like you said, having a plan is the big thing. Is I do want to step back from, as much as I love sales, I want to have another salesperson, which I will be bringing on this year. And it's just one of those things that it's a necessity. You do have to sometimes just, my friend there, Magano, he essentially told me too, he's like, don't be worried about like having to spend that money. You'll make it back in the future, right? Like you just have to look at the future and be like, I spend it now, I eat it now, but then what's this going to look like for, by this time next year? And I mean, we're, I'll say like we increased about 20% from when I took over in premium. And I mean, we are growing, we're expanding, it's starting to pay itself off. I mean, we had one of our best months last month. I mean, just so much going on that it was hard to even keep control of, which was a great thing. I mean, but highest premium, highest items that we've had since I took over. And I mean, with the salesperson, that's the only way I was able to do it. Yeah.
It drives me crazy. You have like a lot of people out there, a lot of talking heads, so much information talking about, oh, you can crush it at your agency by selling, and it's all focused on the selling and none of it on the math. Right. And I think that if we can, I think you now have an understanding of the math, when we know the math, you can remove the emotion, right? If we know the data, this is the equation, this is the math. Okay, I'm not getting my return right now, but I know the math. So I know that in 6 months, it actually does play out. And then in 12 months, it's like stack. 18 months, stack. 24 months, stack, right? And then it starts then it's okay. Now I'm bringing in another salesperson. Boom, boom, boom.
Yep. But it's taking that, it's the fear that holds us back, right? And not thinking of what you were talking about, the compounding effect that it has. Mm-hmm. Month after month after month, 6 months, year, 18 months, those renewals just keep adding up. And It's just the fear, getting over that initial fear of like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be out this money for 3 to 6 months. What do I do? It's not worth the risk. But at the end of the day, if you keep thinking that every single month, then we would be behind. We might not be able to hit our goals, which we would be even farther behind. So it's like, in the end, you have to just kind of take that leap. And like you said, do the math and see what it looks like 6, 12, 18 months out.
I love that. One of the things with business owners, especially, I didn't know prior to being a business owner is, when I was an employee, I just thought week to week or, paycheck to paycheck. And I didn't really understand the investment that it takes to grow. And it is very relatable to what we've been told, growing up, where it's like you invest in, going to college. And then once you do that, you can get a better job, right? That crazy myth. But
spend $500,000 and you'll get a really good job that you'll never make up.
100%. Yeah. But same principle applies though. And the principle is correct where you do have to invest. You have to invest in yourself. First, your skills, in some sort of capacity. And then if you own a business, the best business owners invest in their business and they get really good at delayed gratification. We don't see, no one tells us that prior to being a business owner, or maybe some people if you spend enough getting the right education, but you have to invest in yourself. And the business owners that can think the furthest out are the ones that have the most success. How long can you delay that gratification? 6 months, a year, 2 years, you know what I mean? How different do you operate when you think that way? And to be able to, for you, it's incredible that early on in business ownership that you've understood that, hey, I have to delay that gratification if I really, truly want to step up. If I want to make an impact, if I want to be able to grow outside of just me making calls. I know that was my biggest pain, was that first year I tried to do it all myself. And I realized there's no way I'm going to be able to do this. Even if I was the best salesperson on the planet, I wouldn't be able to do this. So the best use of my time is getting somebody else to do it, or at least proving it with someone else so I can do it with them. And then I have a model in which to scale. But all that stuff costs money. And it comes back to fear versus faith. Either you're going to have faith and make that step and those moves in the right direction and not let the fear take over, because fear is always going to tell you to not do that, right? And when we operate in fear, and I think it's hard not to, being an agency owner, especially with the change of environments, is if you're making decisions based on fear, you're not making true leader decisions. But if you're moving in faith, then it's like the great sign of a leader. And it's awesome that you've learned that early on and have been able to take the plunge and see success now. At least you're having the best, did you say the best month ever, right?
Yeah, it's our best month to date. And it's
super cool.
It was a good feeling to be able to have that, because I hit over a goal that I established with one of my leaders as far as what I wanted to do in a month, and, premium wise and item wise, and we were actually able to do it. That's hitting those goal marks, right? I set it well above what we did in any month last year. And I was like, you know what? This is my goal I want to get to. And it happened. And I was like, okay, this is a